The way I like to describe him to people who have not had the pleasure of meeting him is Jim is the guy who every gearhead would be given the same means at his disposal.
And Jim, what about you? How would you define your car and what sets it apart from everything, even the sort of one-off Ferraris of the world that the major manufacturers are doing?
We build race cars. We race them. And then we make the road legal.
You want to tell us a little bit about the background of your family business? This is now a third generation business?
When I was a kid, I always was curious about how things worked. I loved taking things apart and seeing how they work. And when I was a young boy, I rode my bike almost 20 miles. I was about 10 years old to Mr. Canetti's Ferrari dealership, and I looked in through the window. And you know, Mr. Canetti wasn't all that fond of little kids, but he let me look in the window. And then eventually he let me come in, then he let me sit in the cars, then he let me touch the steering wheel, not the shift. And eventually I began running errands for him, like riding my bike down to the speed shop down the street and getting ignition wires for his race cars. And Mr. Canetti taught me a lot of things. He taught me that no matter how wonderful a new Ferrari was, it could be improved. And this was something that stayed with me through my whole life. The next car I bought was an ex-Donahue McLaren T70 Lola, the blue Lola sitting behind us.
That's a beauty.
That had won 8 major races. And my dream was, could you take a car like that and modify it into a road car? And the Lola was really SCG1. It was my first attempt to take a race car and put in air conditioning, make it the windshield wipers work, the heater, the defogger, make the brakes work on the road, the steering. Interestingly enough, that car had been bought by Andy Warhol, who was going to use it in a movie. I don't know if he ever did, so I bought it from the Warhol business operation. And as time went by, and then I began collecting cars. Every time I made a film, I made some money. I put half into Wall Street, and I put a little bit into cars. And eventually, I was approached by Pininfarina and asked if I wanted to commission a one-off car. Pininfarina had a long history of designing cars for Ferrari. A lot of people were saying, you know, Pininfarina's lost it, these aren't really so beautiful. And I think Andrea was at the point where he really wanted to show the world that Pininfarina hadn't lost it, but simply that Ferrari was becoming more involved with the day-to-day design, and the resulting designs were what Ferrari wanted, not necessarily what Pininfarina and Andrea thought were beautiful. So he went looking for a customer who would be interested in making a one-off Ferrari that would showcase Pininfarina's design talents and especially reach back to perhaps a more beautiful time in their design history. And what I did was I sent one of my original P34's chassis 0846. I sent that to Italy, to Pininfarina.
P45 is a great thing because it was this really captivating moment from a car culture perspective, because here you have a guy in Jim who basically decided, you know what, I'm going to build a better Enzo. So he takes this incredibly rare car that everybody pretty much worships, and they really did go and turn it into something better.
I said to Paolo Torella, who was head of the Special Projects Department of Pininfarina, could we possibly go racing? And we started looking into it. The problem we had was that as a one-off car, it wasn't a traditional homologated sports car, so there was really no class it could be in. And in addition to which, since it was based on the Enzo, it was a V12, which was really very fuel inefficient. And modern racing actually requires fuel efficiency if you want to do well. So our idea was, what if we took a Ferrari race car, a GT2 car, and we reworked it and restyled it to look like Ferrari P45 by Pininfarina? Could we race that? And we went looking for races, and we went to the Nürburgring, where the organizers of the Nürburgring said, sure, you build it, you can race. So we set off for the next year to re-engineer the entire chassis, make it much stronger, to re-engineer the engine to make it have more horsepower. Also, we fitted a Formula One kinetic energy recovery system that made the car a hybrid. So it was more efficient. We harvested the energy that normally would be lost in braking in heat, and the car was about 15 seconds a lap faster year over year. And the second year we went out, we did very well. We finished 12th overall out of 180 cars. We won in class, and as the Porsche hybrid did not finish the 24 hours, we actually won the FIA Alternative Energies Championship, which is a really terrific accomplishment for a privateer.
When you do 24 hours, sometimes you lose a little bit of your nerves. But you know, we got it, and at least we got a nice team. It's beautiful. We go through a lot of things, but in the end, we got it. We got the trophy. We got the cup.
And then our dream is to go and win Le Mans.
That's right, the LMP1 category that began from the ashes of Group C in the early 90s and forged legends at Le Mans and in sports car racing in general has reached its end.
Le Mans Endurance Hypercars, a new name and a new concept for the top class in world endurance racing.
Either you design an LMH from scratch, or you work on a shared structure and you develop an LMDH.
Ambitious US manufacturer Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus were the first to commit to the hypercar regulations.
In the 60s, cars that raced at Le Mans could be like an MG, a Triumph, a Corvette, a Cobra, a Porsche, a Ferrari, an Aston Martin. They look like cars that normal people could aspire to own. Then in the later years, they became very hyper-technical race cars, and they sort of lost the look of sports cars. So under the hypercar rules, you're going back to things that will look much more like an SCG and much less like an LMP1, and can actually be road legal. So that's what the formula is changing to. So under the new Le Mans hypercar rules, which we had a lot to do with causing to go into effect, we're going to build a very limited edition of about 20 road legal Le Mans race cars, and a few of them we're going to take Le Mans and race.
Jim, there's no logic to any of this. It's all about passion, it's all about heart, and nobody hearing you talk could doubt that that is dripping from every pore. So I'm absolutely certain you're going to find a very warm welcome in the World Endurance paddock. And from the fans as well, whenever we get them back on track, and whoever's watching online or on the TV, you know, we're infected with this crazy drug, and you've got it bad, my friend. You've got it really bad.
Rebel made.